So we sort of think we know who most of the real estate developers are and where they are in their sort of life cycle of technology transformation. And, if we were to go back to the earlier years of Northspyre, 2017 to 2019, sometimes, you call a developer and you say, can I show you a demo of this? And you get someone that said, like, I've been doing great for 30 years. I don't need to think of software. No, thank you. I don't even want to see a demo. Now, almost everybody is curious enough to, they've encountered the problem. I think they think about like how they can solve these problems. And I think there's greater awareness that there are tools that allow you to get to more predictable outcomes, to leverage automation, to have proactive insights, to make just smarter, more informed decisions at every step, whether it's at the portfolio level or on the individual project level, day to day. And there's just more awareness that something might exist. And so now you have more receptiveness, at least among some people in the office, right?
Welcome to Plus Partners, where we dig into the stories behind successes. I am Kevin Burke, founder of Burke Plus. We partner with companies in tech and real estate to help grow their revenue by leveraging the latest AI systems, tools, and strategies. If you want to hear a little bit more about that, drop me a note in the comments. Today, we have a great guest, William Sankey. Thanks for coming, William. Co-founder of Northspyre, the only end-to-end real estate development management platform out there. Welcome.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate that. I'm humble you thought of bringing me on in your inaugural season of the podcast, and really happy to be here and to exchange some ideas and talk about real estate and where things are headed and anything else that's on your mind.
Excellent. Well, I am the one that's honored. You are doing some amazing stuff out there. And I have to attribute it to your time at the GSD and being an urban planner, only because I also have a degree in urban planning. So I feel like we're kindred spirits here, which is great. And I'm very curious how somebody with a very distinguished degree in urban planning finds himself developing software solutions.
I did notice that, Kevin. I was super intrigued and very interested in this conversation. I saw, you had a background in the landscape architecture and urban planning.
That's right, yeah.
A lot of parallels. I started out as architecture and then urban planning in grad school. And I felt like maybe there was a similar arc there. And there's maybe some, maybe we could talk a little bit later in the podcast. But in terms of, how that arc of, how to go from someone studying urban planning and architecture and then to tech, I think, I don't think it was a completely predictable path. So, like you mentioned, my educational background was in, architecture, and then I was very interested in even the broader picture beyond what's happening with an individual building and site. So urban planning felt like the sort of next natural step. All these other factors that influence the built environment. And I was someone that always was pretty passionate. I think the recurring theme was just like my passion about the built environment. How do you build better places? How do you build places that, where people live their lives happily or healthily? All of those things, right? And I felt like there were just a lot of different dynamics and ways to influence that, whether it's architecture or at the city scale. And as I was studying urban planning, one of my concentrations actually was real estate development. I had two concentrations at the GSD. One was real estate development. The other actually was ecological urbanism, which is very related to a lot of landscape urbanism thread that was going on back probably a decade and a half ago, which I'm sure we could probably go down a rabbit hole on, Kevin, given your background, landscape architecture. But I guess, given my other concentration in real estate development, I left grad school. I went right into running projects in New York City. So I worked on a lot of different types of projects, sports arenas, condo buildings, mixed income rental housing in New York, warehouse conversions in Brooklyn Navy Yard and the South Bronx into office and retail, all these different types of projects, a lot of different flavors of, cast of characters on any project, which you very well know. But I saw just some of the same recurring challenges around how do you deliver a complex development project in a predictable fashion, right? And so, that's sort of the short arc of me starting to make this transition from architecture, urban planning, real estate development, and then starting to have some inklings of, hey, there's a problem to solve here. And happy to close the loop there, but I maybe thought I just set it up to answer your question of, I think maybe, I wanted to sort of like start answering that a little bit.
Yeah, it's very funny how many touch points we share. And I do think that background tends to pull people in a direction that when you become interested in how cities and communities are built, then when you get down to the granular level, you really start to identify how you can participate in that activity. It's one thing to draw it all out on a big plan and say, this is how it should be. It's another thing to actually understand what it takes to actually get those buildings and those projects that make up the bigger plan to come to reality.
Exactly. I mean, I think the way of thinking, when you come from an architecture, landscape architecture background is, those are both very interdisciplinary, multifaceted disciplines. Lots of, there's a lot of angles of approaching problem solving, and things that impact, the end, whether it's the landscape or a building that you're working on, that you're trained to think about and explore solutions for. And I feel like that thought process, if you think about building software and a technology product, in a lot of ways it's similar. It's very interdisciplinary. You're working with designers, you're working with end users. I guess the corollary there would be like the end users of your building or your site. And you're trying to synthesize all these competing stakeholders and interests into something that is easy to use, that people enjoy using, whether it's a building, a place, or in this case, a software that solves a very specific problem. And I guess our case at Northspyre, how real estate developers manage complex projects and all the vendors and capital partners as part of that process, and trying to get to more predictable, repeatable outcomes on complex projects and across our portfolio of projects.
Yeah, real estate is like the ultimate UX UI exercise, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's a nice way to put it.
So, how did you guys come around to thinking we should found a company that will fix this problem that we're seeing? That's a pretty big step.
Yeah. So sometimes I call myself a reluctant founder. I guess that, I mentioned I started my career on the traditional side of real estate development. So, I was in New York working, at the, I think there were sort of two, inklings and sort of pivotal moments that really, I think, sort of tipped me into trying to jump out and start Northspyre and solve this problem. When you're, maybe as a bit of a background, when you're running a real estate project, often you have this myriad of like interconnected workflows where usually you're managing them through a series of spreadsheets, whether it is managing the dozens, if not hundreds of vendors on a project, you're managing your budget, you're trying to manage payment to all of these vendors, you're working with capital partners, sometimes multiple capital partners that you have to report to every month and draw down funds from. And then, you maybe you're doing that with one project, and then you maybe have a portfolio of projects where you're trying to grapple with that across all of these sort of different like project managers and development managers and projects that are happening, and make sense of it from a business perspective. And, traditionally all of that has been done in a mix of spreadsheets, sometimes in conjunction with legacy applications like an accounting system or something like that. And so, over the course of my, early career running real estate projects, I got to see a lot of combinations of how people try to tackle that. Usually always spreadsheets in conjunction with something else, right? And, I had mentioned there's sort of like two, I think, pivotal moments. The first, I was assistant to the project executive when they were doing this $1 billion transformation of Madison Square Garden, the arena. By the way, very timely. Go New York Knicks. We're having a great season.
Careful.
Oh yeah, I forget you're Boston. Sorry, Celtics.
Come on, Tatum just went down with a torn Achilles. You're kidding.
We only, it's been over half a century, so you gotta give us one. Boston gets them all the time.
Well, my son's a Villanova grad, so I got to give those guys a little bit of credit.
Lot of good things in Villanova going on. Is that right? But I guess I was assistant to the project executive as they were transforming Madison Square Garden. And I like to call myself, I was sort of a spreadsheet monkey. I was very fortunate at the time. He was really brilliant about what it took to manage a project that had over 400 vendors, where you were spending $30 to $80 million every month. You're trying to keep track of all of the change orders. You're negotiating with vendors. You're managing this overarching budget. And then Madison Square Garden was owned by a publicly traded corporation that you're reporting to, and you're trying to align to what's happening in their broader corporation, right? And so, I was deeply embedded in trying to help him answer all of the questions through spreadsheets so that he had the right information to make decisions to move the project forward. And I remember there was one night I was in the office in the Penn Plaza office complex, the office buildings around Madison Square Garden where we were working out of. And it was 1 a.m. in the morning, and I was trying to debug a spreadsheet so that, our project executive, he would be able to show up to the meeting the next day with the relevant information, bringing data to that conversation. And it was the most complex spreadsheet. It had these 400 vendors in there. It was completely convoluted. We were trying to tie together this forecast of what might happen on the project versus actuals, all these things going on. And there was a glitch. And I was trying to get to the bottom of it. And I finally solved it at 1 a.m. But I thought to myself, wow, this is like this team running Madison Square Garden. It sort of put together this all-star team of like leaders. And I was sort of like the low-ranking person on the staff there, but they assembled this cast of characters that were some of the best development leads in New York. And I thought, man, this is how the best people are doing it, and this is the tools they have available. At some point, maybe there will be a machine that does some of this. And my core skill is being the spreadsheet monkey. Maybe I should learn to code at night for job security. So I started taking coding classes by night, learning to code. Did that for 4 years, taking coding class at night. Started to build little tools in the daytime to help automate parts of my project. Working on building a condo building. Wrote a tool to help scrape the Department of Buildings website to automatically check if my permit across 80 units, if the permit status was ready for the construction crew to work in that unit in a given day, and all of that. And I think the second one, this sort of eureka moment that came a couple years down the road was, thinking, okay, I think I've been at 3 different development firms now. They all look very different on the outside. You got your mega 10,000 person company. You have working with Harry Maglow, visionary, eccentric billionaire developer. You have these really smart finance guys at Madison Realty Capital that are getting into development. All look very different on the outside, the same challenges they're grappling with. And I thought I saw some patterns of how you could solve that with key data points around things like this, key simple data points. How do you track invoices, commitments? But how do you leverage technology like automation and bringing data analytics to that conversation in a way that made it easy to use and adopt? And I think I had a bit of a vision, built a prototype, mainly to help myself run projects. It was sort of self-interest. And at some point, I think it made sense. I thought, there's actually something here. I tried to implement many tools and softwares across the industry. I was I probably not best to name what tools those were, but let's say I try all the legacy application, from these real estate ERPs to construction tools that maybe were being force fit for real estate developers, and nothing quite worked. And so I thought to myself, am I going to have to do this? I love being a real estate developer, but I got to solve this problem. Else, and that was sort of the impetus. Was a bit of reluctance, but I jumped out there. We were bootstrapped, and we were very fortunate. My co-founder, who's much more brilliant engineer than me, he took my prototype, made it shine, And our first customer was the MoMA in New York, and that really set us in motion. It was very fortunate. I call it a stroke of luck getting to work with a high profile customer on their $400 million renovation that they were doing at the time. And that really, we were off to the races from there.
That is awesome. It's a great story. I love it. So you're swimming in this sea of data. You sort of bring some of the early rumblings of analytics and automation to the table, and now you're version 2.0 with Northspyre AI driving the whole thing. It's been a ride since, what was that, 2017? I think I saw that you got this started.
Exactly.
You see yourselves now. Like, what's your typical customer? What's a typical project look like for you right now?
Yeah. So, I would say, we've been, you're right. We've been around 8 years. It feels like the blink of an eye in some ways, but it also feels like an eternity in other ways. Our typical customer today is, we like to say, like the owner of real estate, and usually that means they're the owner of real estate that's working on real estate projects. And that tends to mean real estate developers are one of our core audiences, right? Like I say, 70-80% of our customer base is real estate developers of many stripes and sizes. We work across every single asset class. Every asset class, we have customers in every segment, from data centers to multifamily to office, industrial district, K through 12. And I'd say, like, usually our customers there's sort of two parameters that govern whether they think it makes sense to work with us. Either they have a high volume of projects they're working on, and these could be ground up projects, they could be CapEx projects. So they have a high volume of those, and they could be a high volume of small projects, let's say, asset projects, or they have at least one complex project. And by complex, usually that's like, $30 million plus, where you're going to end up with like dozens of vendors, if not over 100 vendors trying to execute on that. Right? And so if you have any one of those parameters, complexity or just like volume of projects, then you're usually running that in a lot of spreadsheets. You have the challenge of trying to make, if you're an executive in one of these organizations like this, you're trying to make sense of what is happening on a project. Usually you're getting stale information, because by the time all the data points hit somebody's email inbox and they wait to the end of the month to update their spreadsheet, but that maybe the spreadsheet's out of sync with accounting and they've had to take time to align those and tie out discrepancies. And then they sit down with you, that information is still. So a lot of times teams are, they are looking at information that's 45, 60 days old to make decisions about where their projects are headed in the next 12 to 18 months, which is never great. So I call it like driving forward while looking through your rearview mirror a little bit, right? Like, not great. And so that's where we come in. And I think, these real estate owners in the past did not have, and it's something I saw often when I was on the traditional side of the industry, they just did not have purpose-built tools for real estate owners and developers. Often maybe you had tools that are built for general contractors, and maybe there's like 60% fit, but it wasn't quite there, right? Or maybe there was like an accounting system or property management tool, which again, doesn't quite get there for being like this sort of home base for a real estate team on how you deliver complex development projects through that full life cycle, right? And I think that's where we came in. We felt like, and that's where I think where our customers feel like they get a lot of value from us, is we don't have customers that are general contractors or anything like that. All of our customers are real estate owners and developers. We are solving the challenges that they face. And again, they range in scale. We have people working on billions of dollars of projects, as well as like small mom and pop developers where maybe two people work at the firm and they have one project.
It's got to be a pretty open platform too, right? To be able to let all the different user groups plug in their content and data and information that they've got going on in a live sort of scenario.
Yeah. So I think the key, it is a pretty open platform. I'll describe how, I think often when people see a demo of the platform, they think, wow, this is amazing. I can automatically understand what's happening across my portfolio. I can aggregate data and benchmark automatically. Then I can zoom down into individual projects, forecast cash flows, automatically compile a draw package for my capital partner in 10 seconds. They're like, wow, this is great. But I don't have a lot of time to, I'm a busy real estate person. I don't have a lot of time to be uploading any information to the system. And I think that was a lot of the problem you saw, I think, with software, what I call like software 1.0, where you took a lot of the work people were doing in spreadsheets and you put it in the cloud, but your team still had to do a lot of like manual work, the data entry to keep it updated. And usually there's a management like mandate that, hey, you have to update the system. But on the ground, because these systems are often inflexible and time consuming to update, people were still using spreadsheets in conjunction with these legacy systems. And I think what made Northspyre unique, and I think why we got a lot of traction, was I had experienced a lot of those problems directly. And what we do is we sync the team's email-based workflow. So you can imagine if you are a real estate project lead, every month you're getting email, and our average customer works with like 230 vendors. So imagine you're on the receiving end at the of all of the documents they're sending you: invoices, contracts, change orders, proposals, certificates of liability insurance, lien waivers, all that's getting emailed to you. You're usually then like either you get interrupted all day because you're trying to keep it organized and not lose all this information, or you wait to the end of the month and you don't update any of your like files in your spreadsheet. Then you put it all in your spreadsheet. Then you send that same information to accounting. They manually upload it again into their system. Right, that's how things work. I think what's a little bit magical at Northspyre is we sync it to their email-based workflow. So we capture that data as is coming in, we extract the data, and then queue it up for your review and approval. And we can show you, hey, this is what you got. Here's the change order invoice we saw attached. We've also extracted the data. We've even categorized this where it belongs on your project. All you have to do is say, I accept this into my project now, all right? And so on the one hand, all this data is coming in now seamlessly and passively in the background without you having to do a lot of legwork to get it in there. And then to your question about so that's step one. That's getting a lot of data in the system. But we also integrate with pretty much, most of the major, I'd say accounting systems that real estate teams use, whether it's simple things like QuickBooks Desktop, QuickBooks Online, or more complex tools like some of the real estate ERPs. Think MRI, RealPage, Yardi, Sage Intacct, Sage 300, a RealPage, all down the line are ones that we integrate with, and we sort of do two-way sync data between these systems and Northspyre. So that's the next level. And then the last level is, not every team is doing this, but I say like some of our more sophisticated, like enterprise customers, we have an open API, which means they're able to, if they want to pull data into other systems, whether it's a business intelligence tool that they're using, or they have some homebrew proprietary platform they do internally and they want to exchange information, they can do that. So it is an open platform that has, you can use out of the box if you're a small developer, because it's easily extracting information right as it's getting emailed to you, or to the more complex organizations where you have your own technology staff that's using our APIs to link into much more complex technical stack in your organization.
Sweet. Sit on that for a minute, right? That is a lot of touch points. I mean, as we both know, start to finish, the amount of hands in a real estate development project is overwhelming. So this sounds like an amazing solution to a problem that I'm sure nobody has been willing to tackle. So good for you for getting right in there. Given that real estate has been a pretty slow mover, I think, by comparison to a lot of other industries, at least development anyways, adopting new technologies and stuff, are you finding there's a little bit of a barrier to entry getting to your potential clients? So those developers, the REITs, or whomever it is that you're sort of targeting?
Yeah, so I would say, one of the, we've had a lot of traction, right? So now we have customers in every major city. And if you took a list of the top 100 metros in the US, we probably have customers in 3/4 of those cities. So, I'd say that and again, from scale, small customers up to some of the large publicly traded real estate owners and teams are using Northspyre. So, every team is unique and every team thinks they're probably more unique than they are. We literally, we have a database of 25,000 real estate developers in the US that we've gradually gotten to know through conversations over 8 years. So we sort of think we know who most of the real estate developers are and where they are in their sort of life cycle of technology transformation. And, if we were to go back to the earlier years of Northspyre, 2017 to 2019, sometimes, you call a developer and you say, can I show you a demo of this? And you get someone that said, like, I've been doing great for 30 years. I don't need to think of software. No, thank you. I don't even want to see a demo. Now, almost everybody is curious enough to, they've encountered the problem. I think they think about like how they can solve these problems. And I think there's greater awareness that there are tools that allow you to get to more predictable outcomes, to leverage automation, to have proactive insights, to make just smarter, more informed decisions at every step, whether it's at the portfolio level or on the individual project level, day to day. And there's just more awareness that something might exist. And so now you have more receptiveness, at least among some people in the office, right? And then I think some teams internally, you have to think about like your ability to implement technology. And so even sometimes when you have, sometimes everybody's aligned, right? And then other times there are cases where, not everybody in the company is moving at the same pace of like interests and like, being able to like adapt to what this evolution that's happening in the industry. And that's normal. So, I say like, the shorter version to answer that is, I think we've had a lot of tracking work with hundreds of developers across the country today. And some of them are like very easy. You get them going, they just send you all their documents and we'll take everything in any format and we'll translate it to Northspyre and get you going. And then you have some that require, it's a little bit more like heart surgery, but that's what we do. We're heart surgeons, we're real estate developers. So that's our job, to help guide you from point A to B to this better place where, you're, more streamlined communication, more lean teams because you're leveraging automation, more data informed decision making at every steps, and hopefully that's increasing your returns or profit margins as you're operating in a more sophisticated fashion.
Yeah, the market is definitely more challenged than it's been in quite a while. There's a lot of pressure from finance teams to bring everything in under budget or closer to budget than it used to be. Get the budgets down before projects even start. There's a lot of regulation that is stopping projects from even going to the ground because they can't get the money back out, in a fast enough fashion of a project. I kind of like the fact that, you guys are you're using data as obviously, primary driver for the solutions that you guys are providing. But you're also doing it in-house, if I understand right. Got a Stevie Award recently, and I think you credited the data-driven successes of your sales team. So you're actually doing this stuff in-house, right? You're learning from everybody that you're talking to.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think, one of the fun things for someone that used to be on the other side of the industry, and I miss being a real estate developer, is we get a chance to talk to, I wasn't exaggerating. I said like we talk to hundreds of, if not thousands of developers every single month. So we feel like we get a pretty good pulse on how customers are operating, like how they are bringing data to conversations or how they could be bringing data and where they think there are gaps. And, maybe I point out like, Northspyre, I think what's unique is we are this like full end-to-end purpose-built real estate development platform in the way that, like I think we're not just a point solution. Like I like to say, you think about the inception of the idea through managing managing the deal to underwriting the deal through pre-development planning, through construction, and even through the existing asset, right? Like you have this sort of unified tool to bring all these workflows together. And across our industry, because they're just, there's, like I said, we think there's like 25,000 developers in the US. They all think they're unique, but because we talk to so many, there's probably, I don't know, 70 different archetypes of how you might be structured and what your elements might be in terms of things that are blocking you from maximizing your potential as a real estate firm. I think that's sort of sometimes it's fun to see because you can just understand the potential of an individual developer, but also the industry and where things are headed. And though it's a little bit of like, I think we could sort of see beyond the horizon in the way that like maybe people that don't have fingers across hundreds and thousands of developers, it's sort of hard to know where the industry is headed.
All right, eyes on the horizon. Where are you guys headed right now? Like, what's your next big accomplishment that you're shooting for?
So I guess, Kevin, we're a really ambitious company, so we always have a lot that we're working on because real estate owners have a lot of challenges they're facing. We haven't really announced this publicly, so I'm gonna drop a bit of a hint at something that's coming up in the very near future. Teams often think about like, in a more difficult market cycle for real estate developers where the cost of construction means sometimes things on pencil or inflation and difficulty getting financing and like you mentioned, regulatory issues. But one of the good things about a down market is sometimes land prices come down. And I always say that the best deals and performing deals in terms of returns are the ones that usually were put together in a downturn and you time it well also that when the market is turning around, you sort of got in at a decent land basis. And so I think a lot of the more sophisticated smart money teams are spending a lot of time kicking the tires on deals, right? And it's a question of how fast can you do that fast in the competition to explore and understand like what is the highest and best use of a given site, what makes sense for potential from like returns, waterfall perspective, what might make sense. And so you have your team wrangling lots of models or the underwriting what ifs to figure out does a deal make sense? How much should I pay for this piece of land? If there's a tool that helped automate a lot of that and made it really easy. I won't say there's a tool that exists yet, Kevin, but there might be in the near future. And I would say stay tuned inside. So like that's something on our radar that we're really curious about. Let's say in the time frame of like the coming months, like really near future. And I think more long term, I think things that are impacting every industry, the emergence of AI, that is transformative. It's something, and throughout the life of Northspyre, we've always been one of these companies that, we wanted to bring the level of technology to other like knowledge-based industries like advanced manufacturing or finance that they were bringing to their work a decade ago, even a decade and a half ago. We wanted to bring that to real estate owners and developers, which has sort of lacked in productivity. And so, we were always using things like machine learning and sort of automatically scraping documents and categorizing them and proactively flagging challenges and opportunities on your project to make you like smarter along every step of the way. But I think with the new generative AI tools and large language models, I suspect there is a future and a not distant future where you may have like real estate developers and people in different roles within those companies, whether you are a deal maker, you are a bid manager, whether you're a project accountant, whether you're a development manager, maybe you're working alongside agentic workers, like AI workers that have a role to play that work across workflows, and their job is like one of your teammates, and you're sort of working collaboratively together to be more than your team could be, a force multiplier, but also, there's some things that I think AI is really good at. It's not good at everything, right? But it can, it's not good at often the judgment, the emotional intelligence aspects that are really important when you're trying to bring deals together and manage a complex project of all these stakeholders, right? But it's pretty good at things like managing a lot of the paperwork that needs to happen or identifying challenges and problems that might crop up on projects, and I could very well see like let's like fast forward a couple years, agentic workers alongside like traditional workers in the industry working in concert together to maximize outcomes.
Yeah, I think you're tapping into the inevitable right now. Like it's coming faster than I think most people realize. The speed at which this technology at this point is evolving is pretty incredible. So buckle up, everybody. Oh, but I also like the way that you I think understand what I think a lot of people that are engaged in AI right now do understand is it's not going to be, you know, human agnostic. The humans aren't going to have an opportunity to step out of the equation. I think we are still going to be in charge of how it gets used and maximizing our own efficiency by tapping into the new efficiencies that it can create, especially in the agent models that are coming out for sure. All right, this is fun, and I'm gonna get close to wrapping us up with something I saw you post about in your feed on LinkedIn, that nobody moves the industry forward alone. So that is your parting comments. If you can tie them into that, what do you got for us?
Oh yeah, man, you're a good sleuth, Kevin. That was some notes I dropped after a dinner we had in Atlanta with some real estate developers, customers, and potential customers. And anytime I think you get to mix with developers of all different caliber working in different asset classes, and at the end of the day, I call them like visionary city builders, right? Like, you know, that's what they're trying to accomplish. They're trying to build something that people find value in or care about. And they're trying to create value for their like investors as well, right? And I think, you know, in our industry, it is traditionally that we're a long tail industry with lots of like small medium sized firms, right? So lots of players, and in any given city the largest developers probably have less than 2% market share, so it's a long tail, which means no one developer has a monopoly on information, right? Every it's one of the more democratic spaces to be able to enter because there's always more land and more opportunity. You have a vision. And so, I mean, I think part of the point I was getting at in terms of, we don't move forward alone, which is, yes, developers are competing with each other. And even within development firms, maybe they're competing ideas and strategies. But I think collectively as an industry, what I've noticed increasingly is the willingness of everyone to think about like, I think people realize that our industry is in many ways like lagged on technology adoption and productivity increases. That even if you look at construction teams, they all are using a software platform now. You would think, I remember when I came to the industry, they were all using spreadsheets. Now every developer would think, by the time I left the traditional side, you would think, man, I wouldn't hire that construction firm if they came to me saying they were going to run my $50 million project in spreadsheets. I think they were incompetent, right? But like I think that is collectively as an industry. I think this realization of like has set in partly because of sometimes there's always external motivators, right? You have a market downturn. You have teams that have to be more efficient. You have to like compete for capital. And so all that to say, I think people are putting their heads together and there's like a lot of like willingness to explore new ideas together. And how do you get from where we are to this place where we keep building cities and building, producing great outcomes for our capital partners and investors? How do you do that in a more challenging environment where the variables in the game are more complex? And I think everybody's trying to do that together. And I love that. I love being part of the conversation here at Northspyre because, again, we get to sort of see across hundreds of developers, and whether that means like how we share information and best practices, or how we sort of bring people into thinking, approaching problems in a more data-driven fashion. To me, that's where the industry is headed, and it's sort of we all have to move to move ahead, we have to move together in a lot of ways. And so it's, it's exciting to see.
I love it. You might not know it, but you're a big Liverpool fan. You don't walk alone. So, William Sankey, thank you so much for the conversation, for talking to us about Northspyre, and I really enjoyed this. I appreciate your time.
Kevin, thank you so much. I appreciate you. I having this conversation. I felt like you feel like the Bill Simmons of real estate podcast. So thanks for having me, and I really enjoyed the spending the time with you.
All right, I want to come another cup of coffee for that one. Appreciate it. That's it. Another episode of Plus Partners in the books. We'll see you next time.